What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff. That's me, rocking and rolling, baby. We got some trade talk. The Brandon Aiyuk thing went to a different level on Monday night and throughout Tuesday when Matt Mayoko, consider him a close friend. Close would be strong, but a friend, one of the best in the business, and had a report about trade frameworks already being done with teams like the Browns and the New England Patriots. Schefter and Rapsheet reporting throughout Tuesday that the Steelers are getting back involved. So, we got to talk about that because there's a lot of people involved in this thing now. This has gotten a little crazy. I'm not going to lie, because I stand by what I said on Monday. Maybe I have to change the word. I said I would be stunned if he was traded. At this point in time, I can't be stunned, but I still expect the 49ers to keep him on the team. But this stuff is not just made up, clearly. So things are being discussed, and we're going to discuss. I'll give my thoughts on everything. And then the Lions and Giants, they said they were having a joint practice. It looked more like a UFC event, and I think it's pretty easy to figure out why. So yeah, we'll have a mailbag a little bit later today at John Middlekauff, Instagram, fire in those DMs. But before we dive into some football, I had someone send me a DM the other day, and they said, you know what? I'll be real with you. I was getting kind of tired of everyone anointing Zach Bryan as this greatest showman of all time, and I couldn't take it, and I started not liking him. This is not verbatim what he said, but essentially, like, I was just like, give me a break. And then I saw him because of you. Game Time, the official ticketing app of this podcast. And he blew my mind. And I said, listen, I'm not making it up. John Mayer reiterated what I said a long time ago, that when you see it, you're like, I don't know if I've had that many experiences like this. And I don't pretend to be some like a historical musical, like have a ledger of all the greats in front of me. But when you're at his concert, it's pretty special. And if you want to go to a concert, you want to go see him, go see anyone, just go to Game Time. You want to go to a game this fall, do it on, have an experience, and then don't even need to thank me. Just use my promo code. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. One thing since dating and now engaged to Maria, living with a real estate agent kind of enlightens you on people's egos, on people's willingness to adapt to get a deal done, what people argue over during a real estate deal. But I think it's very enlightening of an individual and just a people in general. Now, obviously, buying a home for the overwhelming majority of people is the biggest purchase that they'll ever make. It's the most money you put towards something. It's an emotional, it's a professional, it's a personal, it encompasses everything. But it's pretty eye-opening because I've seen a lot of these deals, whether you're dealing with a $500,000 house, whether you're dealing with a $2 million house, comes down to like under 10 grand, but there's ego involved. It's like, I'm not going to give that. It's like, wait, you're really going to rescind your offer or tell him no based on $7,000? You're poised to make 200 grand. And it happens. And it happens all the time. And the other thing I've seen forever, and I wasn't able to afford my first house till I was 38 years old. Lived in a condo forever, which wasn't cheap because of the Bay Area, but it was really shitty, is you hear all the time that young people, and obviously homes have never been more expensive relative to what people make, but they're like, people are never going to sell their home if they have a great interest rate. You hear that all the time. And in theory, that makes a lot of sense, because why would you get rid of a house if you're paying 0% interest? Not zero, but 2.8, 3.1, whatever. Well, guess what? People get divorced on a daily basis. I know people that are getting divorced currently that haven't been married very long. People die all the time. People move for jobs. Things come out of nowhere. Hell, I see Maria deals with a ton of clients that move into Scottsdale for work. Where are you from? Minnesota, Georgia, Florida. They didn't plan on it. Things change. You can never underestimate the future, good and bad. And I see it all the time just because I have a front row seat into this just eye-opening business that she works in that deal with these people that ultimately comes down to a big personal deal, right, for them. And I think when this trade and the discussion over Brandon Aiyuk 6 months ago, the Niners were clearly dead set on keeping him. And then you get to a point where, are you really going to not get the deal done over $1 million a year? Like, if you're willing to pay 27 and ultimately 28 will get it done, are you not going to budge? Is it really worth taking it an extra couple weeks? Seems a little crazy to me, but maybe they just have a number and we think the value over that is just not worth it to us. And listen, when deals go south with that mindset, sometimes that's true. Maybe we go based on the budget, based on who we need to sign, extend. We just can't go above that. Seems crazy to me, but I'm not naive enough to think I know all the idiosyncrasies of a salary cap, of bonus money, of what Purdy's going to cost. I get it. What Trent Williams is going to cost. Got a lot of moving parts. But this trade is a good example of things change and things change fast. And Brandon Aiyuk and his camp is clearly just not playing ball. And I think the 49ers, by this story coming out from one of the top 49ers reporters, I know reporters get mad when you source guess, but I think it's pretty clear what the 49ers are saying. Like, we need a resolution. We're not doing this any longer. Like, here's our offer. Here's what other people are willing to offer. If you want to play in these two teams, let's rumble. Takes two to tango. We're ready to dance. And if you don't want our offer, this is what these two teams are offering. We have deals done. Go play for them. And I think that's what the 49ers did on Monday night. They kind of drew a line in the sand. Because Bosa was never going to go anywhere. If he was healthy, he was going to play the majority of his career for the 49ers. When you get to a guy like Aiyuk, listen, we really want him here. He's a winning player. But, like, this is our number. We don't feel like we're royally screwing you here. We get you emotionally think you're at a different level. We disagree. This is what we're willing. We'll even allow you and your agent, who was also John Lynch's agent, talk with other teams, see if you can get more. But this isn't free agency. So these are the only two teams we'd be willing to accept their offer. And that's where it kind of feels like they're at. Now, when all this came out, and it just shows you how fast things can change. Because I never would have thought a week ago that it would come out like 4 teams are being named and players are being named on other teams with trade offers. I know this. If I was involved in this deal and I was the Browns and Amari Cooper is named, like, I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't want that getting out. The Browns clearly aren't putting that out. So once you drag all these other teams involved, it gets kind of dicey. And that's how the situation is. And let's face it, of all the teams right now that are contending teams in the NFL, the Niners got more crap going on than anyone else. Honestly, it's not close. Today it came out McCaffrey's hurt. Their rookie, Ricky Pearsall, hurt his shoulder. Trent Williams is literally at home on the couch. And you got this thing. But I do think the 49ers are ready for a resolution. So let's look at the 4 teams. Let's start with Washington because it was reported they were in and now they're out. Because part of it is Brandon Aiyuk was like, in the offseason, he acted like he was Kevin Durant. Like, I want to go to Washington or I want to go to the Steelers. Well, do they want you? And obviously Washington has a connection with Jaden Daniels where they played together for a year in college. Washington's out. You know why? It makes 0 sense for them to trade for him. If he was a free agent, 100% pay him. But for them, they aren't a player away. They're about 10. And when you start over as a GM and as a head coach, take a deep breath. Don't rush into anything. The more assets you have, the more flexibility you have, you can figure it out as you go with your young quarterback. Clearly, you're going to need more talent on offense and defense and as a team. But, like, let's just see what you got. No one expects you to win 10 games this year. If you win 5, it might suck for the year, but very understandable. show the quarterback has made a little progress, they can't trade a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk because the probability of them drafting in the top 10 is just too high. But if you're the 49ers, they're not going to give you Scary Terry. So do you go, can I get 2 second-round picks? Well, how does that help the 49ers right now? A first-round pick wouldn't, but if that thing turns into 7, you'd have to entertain it, just the possibility of it. But it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense from Washington's standpoint. It doesn't make sense for the 49ers standpoint. That's why it doesn't look like it was never going to happen. Let's go to the Steelers. This gets complicated. They clearly like him a lot. And I think one thing they're probably hesitant to let happen if they can control it is to let the Browns get him. Here's the problem for the Steelers. Because you go, well, just trade him your first-round pick. Ideally, that pick's like 24, and then you get Brandon Aiyuk, who's under contract for the next 4 or 5 years, and you're in pretty good shape. You got another offensive explosive player. You got a bunch of defensive guys. You got a culture. You don't have a long-term answer at quarterback. The OC yesterday or 2 days ago said we view Justin Fields as a weapon. It's like, it's not ideally what you want to hear if you're a Justin Fields supporter in Pittsburgh. But if you're Pittsburgh and you go, hey, we'll give you our first-round pick. Well, if you're the Niners, having 2 first-round picks, if you're a good team, is an incredible feeling at the combine, during free agency, and leading up to the draft. You know when it's pretty irrelevant if you have to give up a player to get that extra first-round pick? In August, September, October, November, December, the playoffs. Does nothing for you. That player literally is wearing a college uniform. Gives you 0 value in present time. So to me, there's no match there. It makes no sense. And even if you're the Steelers, you can't afford that if this situation doesn't go well, and for the first time, what if this season the quarterback position is awful and you go 7-10 and all of a sudden you're drafting 14th. And if you wanted to get aggressive, you'd be able to get up to 5 and draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft. You have to leave that flexibility open. You're not a wide receiver away and not a player. Like, this ain't Devontae Adams. And back to Washington, like we saw a couple years ago, if you trade for a great wide receiver, and Devontae's a better player than Aiyuk, and you give up a lot and it doesn't work out, it's like, what are we doing here? And you lose ammunition to go get the quarterback. Now, Devontae, they thought they had Derek Carr. Clearly, that fell apart. The Pats, this one, okay. Because like any deal, there's someone could knock on your door and go, hey, I'll offer you $500,000 for your house. Well, depending on how much your house is, if your house is $200,000, you're like, hey, have my shit packed up cash right now. I'll have it packed up by tomorrow. If your house is worth $2 million, you say kick rocks. So if you're the Pats, you're like, we need some action. We got to pay somebody. Yeah, we'd be pretty interested. But if you're Brandon Aiyuk, the first thing you go, well, I've been on a dominant team for the last 4+ years. This is easily, and even Pats fans will agree, one of the worst teams in the league. They're not going to be good. So you are going to suck. So whatever the 49ers are offering you is what the Patriots are offering you, that much more. This ain't Texas or Florida. They tax you a lot there too. So if you'd be willing to go there, you're going to stink and probably go immediately to irrelevancy. That has to give him some hesitation. And this is why I think the 49ers throw out the Pats and the Browns. Do I think a kid from Sacramento or I guess Nevada, Sacramento, Arizona State, 49ers wants to move to Cleveland, even though that's a good team, or definitely the Patriots? I don't. Especially it's one thing if it's like a $20 million difference, but I don't think that's what we're talking here. But the Pats can make the 49ers think. It's like, hey, Matt Judon, he's clearly willing to play it out this year because, like he said, he doesn't want to get fined. What if we trade him to you? We'll give you Kendrick Bourne that already knows your system. And depending on how productive Aiyuk is, it can fluctuate on the second day. So a 3rd-round pick can turn into a 2nd-round pick, depending on how many games we win, how productive he is, or whatever. Makes you think. Like, you have a meeting over that. John, Kyle, you have your wide receiver coach, you have your D-line coach. Like, you're doing some evaluations. your scouting department. You're having several meetings on that. Like you're talking that out. Are we better with Judon, with Leonard Floyd, and Nick Bosa? Maybe our wide receiver room clearly takes a step back, but this guy already knows Debo looks fantastic in camp. This young rookie who's hurt again. Like, these are just conversations you have. And Cleveland, to me, is the most intriguing because Amari Cooper, from a statistical standpoint, it's just a plug-and-play swap. They're very similar players in the sense of great route runners, get open on everybody. Like, you feel, close your eyes, you're getting 75 to 80 catches. Amari's been doing it at a much longer level. I think Amari is easily considered one of the better route runners in the entire NFL. I think Devontae would be near the top. Keenan's pretty high. Aiyuk has thrown his hat in the ring, and Amari. So you do that. You're not tied to Amari because he's a free agent. But here's the problem. Because even if Aiyuk's like, okay, I'll go there. They're going to sign me to more money. I'll go play there. If you're the 49ers, can you do a swap for a one-year rental and also not get a good pick? And that's where it makes it complicated for Cleveland. Because I was looking at Cleveland's books today, doing a little Jake Rosenberg, Howie Roseman. Like, let's take a look at the money. Obviously, Deshaun is on the biggest contract in the history of the NFL. Myles Garrett, while it was trumped last year by Bosa, is still on one of the biggest contracts in the history of the NFL for a non-quarterback. They also signed Denzel Ward to a massive contract. They have a very, very high-priced team. So having draft picks, which this year, for the first time in forever, they got a bunch. Well, clearly, if I'm giving you Amari, I don't also need to give you my first-round pick. That's a joke. True. That's fair. But I'm giving you a young player who you are going to extend that you're going to have for a while. So I'm going to need something else back because it's pretty clear Amari's going to be a one-year rental for me. So then we start discussing second-day picks. Those are pretty valuable because that is where you get cheap impact starters. Anyone in the NFL will tell you the second and third round, obviously you have a top 10 pick. It's a chance to get a game changer. But a lot of people get uncomfortable in the 20s. Because you pay first-round money for a pick that actually hits at a lower percentage than even 50-50. Yet in the second and third rounds, historically, a ton of Pro Bowlers, a ton of long-term starters come out of that. And for 4 years, sometimes you give them an extension after 3, you get a guy for like $1 million a year. And that's where I think all these situations are really, really complicated. Now, if the Steelers wanted him and they'd give him the first-round pick and the 49ers know they're not going to trade him, maybe they just call uncle. I don't see they would get destroyed for that because that first round pick does nothing for them week 1 against the Jets. And in these situations, this is where, and I saw Kyle say this, like every situation's so different because they were like, does this remind you of Nick Bosa? Of course it doesn't remind him of Nick Bosa because Nick Bosa never was not going to be a Niner. They are clearly entertaining this because they're kind of tired of it. They don't want to deal with it anymore. It's a pain in their ass. I like Brandon Aiyuk. He's been a fun player to watch expand his game over the years. And he's tough. He blocks. Like, that's a big difference between him and Amari. If I say they're very similar in the passing game, where they're not similar as the run game. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the better run blockers in the league. He's a badass. Like, that's not really Amari's thing. Guess what that is? That's a Kyle thing. Kyle likes to run the ball all the time. And if you're screwing up Christian McCaffrey's box score, you're screwing with Kyle and he's going to get pissed off. Well, Brandon blocks his ass off. And that's where all this stuff gets really, really complicated. And I do understand, like, I wouldn't be that comfortable paying him $28, $30 million a year. I don't think he's worth that. I really don't. You can say, well, this is the money. When DJ Moore gave me 100 catches a year, and I'm going to throw him the ball that much. Amon-Ra, if he's on the field, is going to get me 120, and I'm going to throw it that much. The 49ers aren't going to throw it that much. They never have. They never will, as long as Kyle Shanahan's calling the plays. That ain't their style. So when you have a number and you're like, I'm not budging on this. Like the Eagles pay their 2 wide receivers. Do you know what Jeffrey Lurie has loved to do since Andy Reid in 1999? Throw the ball. He wants to throw the ball. That is like an Eagles ethos as an organization. We want to pass the ball. It's an analytic thing. They're an analytically run operation. Obviously, they like running. They like running backs, but they prefer to pass. So running backs, like why Saquon made some sense. He actually didn't cost that much. And if Aiyuk is only going to be a 75 to 80 catch guy, people on the internet can argue all day long he'd go somewhere else and thrive. Great. He ain't going to do that there. So why are you willing to pay the freight? But you also can't just give him away. This isn't fantasy fucking football. This isn't NFL Live with players everywhere just saying, let him go. That's not the way the world works. Like, I do need a shitload of value back. And that's what complicates all this stuff. And even on the other team standpoint, like, it's easy to say no if you're the Steelers. Obviously, if you're Washington, like, we're out. It's easy if you're Cleveland. Like, yeah, we'll give you Amari in a fifth. Well, if you're the Niners, like, no. We're giving you a younger, ascending player. You're giving us a guy that is a one-year rental. And the Cleveland, why do they want to budge? Because they need those draft picks. And the Pats, I think that comes down to is like, okay, Brandon, you want to go to the Pats? We'll get you a first-class ticket tomorrow. If you want to go sign the contract. They'll give us back what we want. He's like, yeah, man, I'll just keep, see you at the hold-in. See you guys in the cafeteria. What time's the meetings tomorrow? 8:30? Yeah, I'll be there at 8:15. Get my typical omelet. That's what it feels like. And that's what this situation, and listen, the Niners deserve, like, how did it get to this point? And I think a big reason, because I go back, why didn't they trade him? Like, if they knew that it was going to be complicated? Because the offers weren't there. Because he's Brandon Aiyuk. He's not Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams. People were lined up to give him a first-round pick after the combine, before free agency. That wasn't the case. They didn't have a first-round pick on the table around the draft. He can get mad. People can argue over the analytics all you want. Like, the market's kind of speaking for itself. And now they're hoping maybe a little desperation, training camp, teams feel pressure. But like I said, I think the situation is going to keep playing it out, which doesn't help the 49ers, which clearly feels like they're more involved in this. And Trent, like, hey, this is one of the best players in the league. You probably want to get him to camp. He's 35 and you want him working out. And if you're a Cowboy fan right now, you're like, what the hell is going on with the 49ers, Eagles? And it's true. And it's crazy. But all these other teams are involved, and I can't imagine they're happy, especially the teams where you're leaking their players might get traded. If I'm the Browns, I'm like, what? Come on, guys. Don't leak. We trade you Amari Cooper. We need this guy if the trade doesn't happen. Not playing best ball at DraftKings? You're missing out. Here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We're talking 15 million guaranteed prize pool with two millionaires being crowned for the first and second place. If you're set it and forget it type, then Best Ball is for you. No waiver wires, no roster management, bigger roster so injuries won't end your season. Only the draft, and that's it. You're set for the year. 15 million prize pool. Still not convinced? Check this out. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get in on all the best ball action. Download the DraftKings app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Millionaire contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of the 2 millionaires only on DraftKings. Last but not least, the Lions and the Giants. Every clip I've seen of those practices has been really, really enjoyable. It has been an all-out brawl in Jersey. Every other play feels like just 10 guys going at it from each side. And then I started thinking, it's probably the perfect storm. It really is. Obviously, fights happen in these training camp practices. You're so used to hitting your own teammate. You just get tired of doing the same stuff over and over. So finally, you get to play another team. It's full speed. Guys are hitting late. You don't know the guy. He might push your head or whatever, and you get triggered and you fire. But think about this. The Lions are now viewed as one of the best teams in the NFL. And their coach, remember on Hard Knocks a couple years ago, is pretty nuts. And he likes edginess and fighting. And I'm not saying he wants guys swinging, but he wants you right on that line. And that's the way he coaches. I would imagine that's the way he was as a player. That's clearly the way he's run his operation. Like, we're going to hit you right in the teeth. Listen, he went viral for all of his sayings, like, I'm going to bite your kneecap and have a lion on that, which is awesome. I find Dan Campbell one of the better characters of the NFL. So they're this team. It's kind of like new money or maybe some newfound muscles that walks around a little cocky and shows up like, we're going to beat your ass. And then you got the Giants, who everyone is making fun of. In New York, in other states, on every network, on every podcast, everyone thinks they're going to suck. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you even kind of believe what other people are saying. If you have any ounce of pride, eventually you got to fight for like your pride and your ego a little bit. So you get this team that's walking around cocky as shit, rightfully so. I mean, I think the Lions are going to be really good. And then you get this team that everyone's bad mouthing. Ain't a soul that ain't outside of that building. And they're like, we're tired of this crap. And that's why I think they're just fighting nonstop. It's like the perfect combination, right? A lot of people listening right now probably have dogs, and you go on dog walks, and depending on where you live, maybe you got a park or maybe you got like a grass area. It tends to be a meetup. And there's nothing worse than a dog walk meetup if you're just in a bad mood or you got your AirPods in, you're just like, I do not want to talk to anybody. And then you run into the chatty Cathy of the neighborhood. And it happened to me yesterday. It's like, oh my, I can't take it. I'm like, Lolly, please just take off and let me chase you. But she's just sitting there watching us. It's like, oh, this is awful. You got to think of a great excuse on the fly. Or, in Arizona, it's so hot, you got to try to take your dog on a walk really early in the morning. So if you go like 5:36 or whatever to the grass or the dog park or just wherever you're going, and you just haven't had your coffee yet, I don't mind getting up early, but I'm not a morning person in the sense of I'm not happy in the morning. So like, just give me, I need a coffee. I need a couple nicotine patches, ideally get a workout. But like, if that's my first move, I don't want to talk to a soul, and you can't avoid it. And there's just an edginess to it. And I don't even know where I was going with it, but I just think there's just an edginess to this group and to both sides. And it was just the perfect combination. Oh, I was going to say is, there are certain dogs. I was like, what was the point of this story? It's because if you take you get to know dogs. Oh, that's a little sweet pea. That's Brody. That's Lily. You get to know all the dogs. But there are a couple dogs you're like, you can't put the two together because it's a brawl. And I think this is one of those situations because I bet there are practices going on that just fighting is just not going to happen. And again, there's a difference between a push and just all out brawl after all out brawl after all out brawl after all out brawl. And I just think it's pretty understandable when you look at the plight of both these teams, what's being said about each one, the way they carry themselves. And the Giants just it's kind of fight or flight. Like, you're just going to take it and get embarrassed, or are you going to push back? And ideally in these situations, no one breaks a hand or gets hurt because it's kind of pointless in a weird way. Like, obviously you want to see some fight in your guys. You want to see them have an edge. Daniel Jones. I saw Joe Shane run around one. It's very entertaining, but like, big picture, like, what are we getting out of this? There's something about like supporting your quarterback or supporting your running back or, being there for your middle linebacker or whatever. Totally. But there's also like a fine line of like, what productive happens after the first shove. Only bad things can happen. Only an injury can happen. A broken hand to like a DB or something is pretty devastating. So I don't know. I just, all I know is I really, really enjoyed all the clips. I can't get enough of them. I don't think I've ever seen back-to-back practices with more viral clips of fights. It feels like, at minimum, Florio did an article on Monday. He had 5 clips. Like, here's a clip, here's a clip, here's Joe Shane in the clip, here's Daniel Jones in the clip. It was in like 2 sets of drills. And then I saw more happen today. So congrats to those two teams for entertaining us.